can a billion humans create a single AI that is smarter than an individual human? The answer we're finding is yes.
This is Rich Mulholland. He's an entrepreneur, an author, and a global speaker. We spoke about curiosity, ego, and ambition. We didn't agree on everything, but we had a lot of fun finding out where we did align.
That if there is a super intelligence, something so much smarter than us, I hope it treats us like we treat our cats, not like we treat our cows. We need to have a decent amount of highly greedy, selfish humans who will drive the earth forward, and then the rest of us can worry about making it nice along the way.
I just don't know that's right.
All the power is going to a small group of billionaires. They're going to control all the wealth and things of the world.
People are flying the flag that we're building an empire, so we do have the ability to influence that change right now.
You know what's really cool about what you just said?
I'm not even going to introduce you. I think I'm just going to say, Rich, great to meet you, great to spend some time with you, and that's it. Right.
Yeah.
So, Rich, great to see you, and great to spend some time with you.
It's so absurd. Hold on. Faces, everybody. Yeah, great to meet you too. Thanks so much for having me on your incredible show. I have a good feeling that we're going to cover lots of ground and go lots of weird places.
There's no doubt.
I got a question after my talk last night. I did my Relentless Relevance one. And the last question of the evening was this dude, and he said, do I worry that all the power is going to a small group of billionaires and that they're going to control all the wealth and things of the world? So before I give you my view on it, I would love to throw that at you just so we have a starting point. Does it worry you? And I guess I'm thinking relative to your son. Are you worried for your son that a small group of, a very small handful of billionaires have all the power?
It's a great question. And what I would suggest there, right, is that if our future economies and ecosystems are dependent on only a handful of organizations, it will make the world much easier to regulate and to control. Okay? And so there is the benefit, the upside of that. And I think that you can look beyond just the owner of those businesses, because when they become so big, they can become so regulated. We see these guys in congressional hearings, you know, they have to have a high degree of transparency. Are there people right now which are leading businesses, which it worries me about their approach or some of the things that you read and you listen and hear to? Yeah, 100%. But I think there are in a perfect world, would we like it to be completely democratized and everyone have an equal amount of value across the planet in this thriving economy? 1000%. We sign up for that. Do I worry about the fact that it might be in the hands of 5 or 6 big tech people? I think yes, but I would suggest that might be better than 1,000 or 2,000 tech owners, which are across all different nations.
Yeah, completely unregulated.
Yeah, or very difficult to manage the transparency. So there are two. Where did you get on it?
Well, first of all, I love your answer. I've never thought about it that way in terms of regulation and control, and I think it's good. The two reasons why I wasn't worried about it. So I was listening to Stephen Bartlett, one of his clips, and they're always very sensationally signposted, the end of the world is nigh kind of thing. Like he's got his clickbait right and his things. Anyway, he has this dude on, and this guy's basically saying that that we're all screwed because these few people are going to control the entire world's value and all the economics of it, and none of us are going to have value, and they're going to have all the value. And I think that the biggest gap that he's made in his logic is he's not thought through the root cause of those few people, which is greed. So I actually do think that the world is driven faster by greedy people than by non-greedy people. We need to have a decent amount of highly greedy, selfish humans who will drive the earth forward, and then the rest of us can worry about making it nice along the way at various degrees of greed, because I think we all have some degree of greed. And but here's the problem with the thinking. Let's say 5 humans run everything and control most of the world's wealth. If they control all the world's wealth, and this guy was saying none of us will have jobs, none of us will have anything we can do, these AI companies will do everything, they'll strip everything from its value, we'll all be homeless. Who pays the greedy people? If none of us have work, who pays the greedy people? The greedy people cannot exist. So either we get post-capitalistic, which I have a view on, in that we live in an economy that money isn't the payment. It might be like what Cory Doctorow says, Wuffy reputation economy or something, or it might be something different. But their requirement, there is a supply and demand issue. And so if they control everything and have left everybody else with nothing, then nobody has anything to pay them. So they require, they need the cycle to continue in some way. There needs to be a buyer and a seller for the seller to make profit. And if they rob everybody from the means to pay them, then there's nothing left. Yeah. And I think we have all of historical evidence that the system will figure itself out along the way. So that's my first thing. And then the second thing I said to him is that even within these billionaires, their ends are different. And you hinted on this. So China is a nation of engineers. It's builders, it's things. America is a nation of lawyers, and I don't know if you've read Breakneck or anything. Yep. It's a nation of lawyers and bureaucrats. America has lost its ability to make stuff that isn't digital. Right? It can conceptualize things, but there's basically almost nothing that's made in America. China they are the world's best builders of shit. So now what's happened is, if you remember, DeepSeek came out, I'm saying last year, but now I wonder if it was, no, 2026, it was 2023, whatever. And within, 12, 13 months, DeepSeek came out, and it was open source. And the reason I think for this is pretty obvious, is because China can easily mitigate America's power by American billionaires want to hold the power inside for intelligence, whereas Chinese billionaires don't want that at all. What they want is to take the one thing that America has over them, which is digital assets, and just give it away for free. Because the moment they do that, you get that Chris Anderson squashing of the value. So if everybody has access to all the same tools and they're all free and open source, then we've removed the power there, and the people who retain the power are the ones who can make stuff. The tangible things, the hats and clothes and shirts that we want to actually pay for.
Yes.
And so I think that this power dynamic, if everybody wanted the exact same thing to control the exact same thing, it would be more to worry about. But the fact that you've got the two biggest forces in the world want completely different victory conditions makes for a very interesting dynamic.
I tried to work out how this was going to work economically, right? Because the IBM CEO came out, I don't know if you saw it, about a month ago, and he said that it worked out that I think 8 trillion had been invested into data centers, right?
Yeah.
So in order to get a return on that 8 trillion, you first got to make enough profit to pay 800 billion of interest a year.
Yeah. Right. Data centers are the only industry of the world at the moment.
Yes.
Like incredible. Everything else is just data centers.
800 billion in profit just to pay the interest on the 8 trillion loan, right, on invested. And so I was trying to work out the size of that economy. Now, if you take the 5 big players, Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, the 5 big players, those guys have a combined profitability of about 400 billion, right? So their combined current profitability can only pay 50% of the interest payment that's being invested into this. So we've got one or two things. We've got an AI bubble, or we've got this technology economic acceleration in growth, which is way, way more significant. So I started to look at the numbers. Electricity has roughly a $10 trillion market size. So basically $10 trillion is made or spent on electricity globally, right? And so if you work that out on a 20 or 30% profit margin, that's 2 to 3 trillion a year, right? Now that would be enough profit to service the debt, 800 billion. So what we're talking about there is that the computational power is predicted, must be predicted to be as a resource as on demand, or have the same demand that electricity does today. And so when you think about that, that we're talking about these data centers, the intelligence being able to power, that must be able to power absolutely everything.
Yeah, what I would say is the degree of, I don't know if it's Metcalfe's law as such, but let's call it Metcalfe's law. It doubles is that let's pretend a data center of the 1950s. Let's pretend one of those big computers that take up the whole room,
right? And
it costs a small nation's GDP to build that thing. If we made all of our projections based off of that computer, then we would be stuck with this problem where we're only furnishing half the debt and we'd never get there. But you're working under the long play assumption that the cost of running the data centers will go down dramatically and the profitability of the output will increase. Of course, we still have to go back to where the original source of funds comes from. And so the only way that can work is if, again, you have a willing buyer. And the only way you can have willing buyers if people have money. So what we have to, in my mind, worry about is, if I was the greediest person in the world, all I would be obsessing over is most people's livelihood is about to become fact. They are not going to have the careers they thought they would have. How do I make sure that there's enough money in their pocket so they can still buy whatever it is I want to sell them?
Yes.
And so you've got this very, very interesting problem. This was like, you know why we work 5 days a week?
Go on, carry on.
Henry Ford. Right, so Henry Ford realizes that he's now created, Mercedes invents the car. It's very expensive, and a very small amount of people have it. Henry Ford comes along and says, "Well, I can make lots of cars much easier. Production line, everybody knows." And then he's got this problem, though, is that up until that point, we all worked 6 days a week. And he said, "Well, here's the problem. All of my staff can buy this car, but none of them have any time to do anything with it. They can't. There's no free time." And so he realizes that his vision was to have all of his staff drive. Like, his victory condition was, if all of my people who work for me can actually drive Model Ts and drive around in my cars, then I've won, because I've built a car that's cheap enough for them to afford. So what he did is he did two things simultaneously. He paid them more because he wanted to get that. So he paid people more money. And then what he did is he gave them Saturdays off so that they had a free time and disposable income. And so all of them are like, well, shit, I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to drive up to Connecticut or wherever it is we're going. And I don't know if you know that Henry Ford had to have, from that point, bodyguards for the rest of his life because the other industrialists wanted to kill him because he changed the rules. It's why, by the way, that my staff has a 4-day week, because we now live at the point where how have we not improved efficiency in 100 odd years that we still require the same amount of days to get to the same point? And it's, of course, because we want more.
But we're talking about this economic singularity with Callum Chase, and I've just seen Elon Musk referencing a similar thing, that we're in this singularity, this exponential progression that we can now no longer control, and actually it leads to this place, which I think you're probably right, which is that and the only place you can actually see it going to, right, is where technology companies are running the economies, the big economies, and what's happening is that money is being taxed from those companies, being redistributed into as hopefully a high basic income, universal high income to everybody, and then the consumers, us, are all choosing where to spend that back into services with the elite large tech businesses. And so it does seem almost an inevitable place that we're heading to, unless regulation and unless we all speak up and talk about it. And
right, but then we have another big problem.
Yeah.
Because let's say UBI comes into play. You and I are both ambitious. So how do we compete? How do I flex?
Yeah.
So now what happens is money is no longer, again, we've now democratized that, so we've flattened the value of income. But now, how do I get into a better restaurant than you? What is my measurement of value? If not, so the one thing about money is it makes it relatively easy to value that. The next problem we have to solve for then is, what is our cachet of status?
That's going to be no different, is it? We're going to. I think there will still be the same group of humans which are choosing what to do with that universal high income, and they will then start to create businesses and experiences and this new economy of things which we are yet to understand, but we prefer human experience or human involvement. Or I think I've heard you mention about this future of micro businesses, where actually there are novel, and I see that as well. I see not just micro. I talk about micro services and micro businesses, and I talk about the fact that I think that the place where people will work in the future is in these really deep, narrow businesses where they've got absolute expertise. And so what will happen is the power of these systems that were being built, they will need to access incredible resources, right? So the person that has done the most research on fiber and how it operates in the diet and in the body and all these kind of things, and has the most resources and the most information and intelligence, can then commercialize that intelligence into a service into the big tech companies, as a random example, right? Or whatever it might be. And so it could be experiential hospitality. But so I see this economy evolving. The issue, what I also see is the fact that The 85% of people which go to work today that don't enjoy it, they get zero sense of purpose from what they're doing, right? It's definitely the majority, and it's easy for you and I to sit here and go. You're going to nice places and presenting to tech people or people that can afford about that. But I always start to go back to my hometown and think about the people down in Cornwall which don't have the resources, which are month to month. So those guys aren't enjoying what they're doing, and if you gave them universal high income and gave them the fact they can spend more time with their kids or procreate earlier. So, our declining population is a prediction I think will be resolved by universal high income. They will spend that time doing more things. I also hope the fact that more people work in care and in hospitality and experiential stuff where human touch is valued, right? But I can't help but see that we're on that trajectory.
I think I agree with everything you said there. That would be my hope for the world. We have a speaking program where we train speakers, and so one of the big ideas I go to war with is this idea of purpose, of personal purpose. I think businesses have purpose. I don't think humans. I believe we're walking meat bags. Like, I don't believe that. I think there's an incredible amount of arrogance to believe that we're put here for a reason. It doesn't mean we can't be purposeful, but it amazes me how many people put their purpose in their work. And so in the speaking program, we a core of our tenets is that you have to find your counter narrative. You have to learn to go to war with an idea. And so we showed this one video, and it's Cal Newport talking about Steve Jobs, and it basically says Steve Jobs says chase your purpose, and Cal Newport says but Steve Jobs didn't try to do good. He and it kind of goes into this thing, and so do what Steve Jobs did, not do what Steve Jobs said, is basically what Cal Newport's saying. Right. And so we give it to people to do a counter narrative, and most people just kind of flip that on his head. And this one lady, Kim, from Chicago, she jumps on the program and says, well, hold on a second. Purpose is you all talk about purpose as if it's this thing. Purpose for most people is a luxury. It's a flex. She said, one of my sons is a forklift driver for Amazon. Right, talking to him about chasing his higher purpose for 8 hours a day. Come on, yeah. like it's an insult to him. And her argument is, her son finishes work every day, and he works all day really hard, does a job where he doesn't necessarily love, and he comes home at night and he goes and he picks up this little bag that's got his bowling ball in it, and he puts on his little funny American shirt that they wear with his name on it, and he goes to the bowling alley and he plays in his league and he does his bowling and he watches his bowling videos and his tutorials. And he said, my son's everything he does is in pursuit of that, a recreational obsession. Yeah. And so I do like that idea. I like the idea that we have just conflated purpose and work. Fucking right, yeah. And it's nonsensical. I believe that there's a correlation between hobbies and happiness. People who have hobbies are happier than people who don't. At the end of the day, I see so many people and they just want to go home and switch off. But I don't. I want to switch over. So I want to decide when I get home, do I want to, I love reading. So do I want to read a book? Obviously, I want to spend time with my family, but do I want to read? Do I want to go to jiu-jitsu, or do I want to play a board game? And if you look at my YouTube, which is the one algorithm around my hobbies, it's all of those things. It's books to read, it's games to play, and it's techniques to learn. And by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my brain is already starting to think about what is my evening looking like? My recreational obsession. And that to me is better than purpose at work, than I'm helping the world present better, or, Yeah.
So you disagree with this narrative that what is everyone going to do with this lack of purpose if they lose their jobs?
Yeah, we've got no evidence that supports that. In 2017, I did a talk going to war with the idea of the fourth industrial revolution. I only have 3 problems with it. The first is the bullshit about the fourth. I mean, I was in high school after the third was supposed to have happened, and nobody had mentioned it up to that point, right? It was old Schwab in the 2010 or whatever came up with it. The second is that it's a revolution. There's almost no revolutions left. Everything is happening at an evolutionary timescale. It's like we talk about AI a lot, and let me hang up AI because I think we need a better word for it. I think it's reached semantic stretch, but we're now at an evolutionary change phase. And then, but the main thing is industrial. Like, what the fuck? The least interesting thing happening in the world today is that the way we work is changing. We're putting brain-computer interfaces into humans like Nolan Arbor. Like, it is inconceivable for me that my children will not have a BCI of some sort. Inconceivable that my grandchildren will not be able to communicate at the speed of thought.
Yep.
How staggeringly uninteresting is it that we're thinking, the future of work is going to be so different? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good.
Yes.
If I could be at home all day long and not have to work, and instead put all of my time and effort doing to what humans have done since we first is solving new and interesting problems,
Yep.
that would be amazing. And for the 3/4 of the world, the people you described, they would be way, way happier if they were able to they want to be useful, but they don't want to necessarily have to clean up after shitty hotel guests.
Yes. I'll come back to that point we mentioned earlier, which is in your book, one of the principles you talk about is curiosity.
Yes. The other two happen to be mischief and curiosity, mischief and optimism, I think are what we require to be relevant going forward. But yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But not a huge number of people are curious, right? Naturally. They incline into kind of a more relaxed state rather than, it's the path of least resistance is their preferred path.
Yes.
We can be innately lazy, and laziness is what obviously kills curiosity in many respects. So, do you think that these changes will unlock curiosity, or will the fact that intelligence is abundant and this means that people can now defer their thinking? It's that classic case, isn't it, with the sat-nav, which is, well, I remember this person, an ex-girlfriend of mine, driving to my place several times. She must have been doing it for 12 months. And then we got in a car, didn't have a TomTom with her. This is 15 years ago.
Yeah, TomTom. I had the John Cleese voice.
Absolutely no fucking idea how to get home. She's done it about 100 times. Maybe 200 times. Absolutely clueless. It wasn't even that far. Might be a defining characteristic of my girlfriend. But I do think that people defer to it and become lazy, right? Is that a sign of where the impact of intelligence on curiosity moving forward?
Yes. One of my big debates with my old business partner was his argument. Don's argument was that when he drives to a place for the first 3 times, he would still use Google Maps, but he would check the map. Okay, I've got to get to Santon Drive, then I've got to turn left, then I've got to get to Grayston, I've got to turn left there, I've got to turn right onto this thing. And the first few times he would force himself, and he would open if he got lost and look at it. And he said because he doesn't want to lose the ability to know this stuff. And my argument is your brain, you really have 3 cognitive demands, right? Active processing, incidental processing, and representational holding. And we can only do one active process at a time. So we can only be deeply thinking about something. And for me, knowing how to get somewhere in the world today is a waste of an active process. If I have to spend cognitive bandwidth while I'm driving from A to B, and by all means, eventually I do want to know how to get somewhere, but I would far rather put on a podcast or an audiobook, listen to this thing, get into some deep thought, and sometimes I have to pause it and think about what I'm driving. I don't want to, and often half the time, my drive home from work is put on a book that I'm listening to, have an idea, send myself a note to research it further, then open maybe Gemini or ChatGPT, whichever one I feel like at the moment, then have a debate with it around the topic and my new hypothesis and point of view about this thing, and then get home. What a waste of time if instead I was thinking, I need to look for this road. I think it's coming up, they said, after the petrol station. So there's certain things that we had to spend curiosity on only because of it was to fulfill something, but they're uninteresting. So for me, direction as the average person is not something.
Direction is the output though, isn't it? I gain a good sense of direction, right? And so I would suggest that's where you're valuing the outcome, which is, well, I just want to get somewhere, as opposed to the journey, which is as I learn map reading skills, locations, terrain, all those sorts of things, I start to think about the impact of my decision making to get to a destination on time, right?
Well,
so
for me, though, I've done the maths and I figured out that there is I am curious. So what I don't want to do is tap out and just you be fed things and you know, but I realize that there is a more interesting use of my active process of my brain than figuring out directions. And what at least for me, I found, and not to be too judgmental of your girlfriend that's been somewhere 100 times, I have found that, you know, the places I go, like we moved to the Isle of Man 2 years ago. I know my way around pretty well now. But maybe I should have done what Don suggested, and for the first few weeks, just really done it. And maybe I would have learned quicker. But in my mind, there's not that much value, because now I know my way without maps most places. Yeah. But the fact, if I didn't, it doesn't really feel like it makes it. Whereas,
I guess the indication of this is that behaviour, the impact that's had on people, indicative of the impact that intelligence is going to have on curiosity moving forward.
Yeah, so I think, I nearly derailed us there. Thanks for bringing us back on track. I think the curiosity question, so there is this illusion of curiosity. People have seen, people will sit there and they'll think that they'll tell themselves they're curious because of how much they consume. But that's not curiosity. That's the opposite of that. That's being force-fed information. So I think there's two kinds of humans in the world, and I don't know if this will change. My son asked me years ago, we were standing in the dining room in our Cape Town house, and he said to me, because I'm not religious, and after I lost religion, I happened, and I don't know where you stand on this, but there's no judgment, but after I lost my religion, you go through a few years where you're quite militantly anti it, and I know I'm kind of indifferent to it. But my son said to me, if you could go back in time and find the first priests and people, would you, and end religion, like nip it at its bud, would you? And I was like, absolutely not. Because those people were the original idea hunters. So the entire world looked at the stars and said, white dots, like dots in the sky. And they looked at thunder and said, noise in the sky. But then there was this few people, and they're like, I don't know. Dots in the sky, loud things, flashing lights. Guys, I've got this idea. Hear me out. There is a controlling, and actually they were the original scientists. They didn't have good data. So based on the data they had, they were the idea hunters. And then what they did is they went to the rest of the world, the idea gatherers, and said, guys, listen, this is the world. And they're like, yeah, fuck it.
That works for us.
That works for us. Yeah, angry God man with lightning. Brilliant, love it. And then we go through life, and the idea, of course, where I think has happened now is I think that that is literal. Originally religion was that is literal, and then some things were metaphorical, and what's unfortunately happened is now everything in religious is a metaphor, because nothing literal can be supported by fact. So we're kind of stuck in this thing. So it's lost its utility value. I think it has utility value for the people we're talking about, by the way. I still wouldn't kill the opiate of the masses. Makes sense.
Yep.
But I think the vast majority of the world just want to be told how it works. And a small percentage of the world wants to figure out how it works. Yes. And I think that equation, I think if everybody was an idea hunter, they would go mad. And I think what we need is a good ratio of the two. One last little thing in this, and I want to throw it back. I was doing a talk the other day in not the other day, maybe 6 months ago in Cape Town at an insurance conference. And one of our friends, John Sane, he's a world's 5th best futurist. He's a speaker. He's doing this talk, and he shows up these videos, and he's unapologetic. I mean, he's not pretending it's his stuff. He's showing videos of cool stuff that can happen in the world, and they're all on TikTok. And these audience are watching these videos, and their eyes are big. And John is the world's 5th. He's in the top 5 futurists in the world. But everything he's showing you, and I mean, by the way, John would tell you this as well. Everything he's showing you is historical data. It's like something that's already out there on TikTok.
Yep.
But the audience is like, oh my God, mind blowing. So I said to him, hey, John, listen, I was on later in the day. I said, I want to challenge some of the ideas, because one idea he said everybody should have a reverse mentor. Every 50-year-old should have a 20-year-old that teaches them about how this stuff works in the world. And I said, can I challenge that? I was like, and in a respectful way, obviously. And so I get onto stage, and I was like, I was watching all of you guys, and every time John showed you a video, like, oh my God, and you were this, and afterwards you're all asking all these questions about these technology, and then this reverse mentor thing, everyone clapped and thought it was a brilliant idea. I said, you have access to everything that John showed you. Every single video that John showed you is available on your phone. The difference is that he's trained his algorithm better than you have. John trains his algorithm. Your algorithm trains you. And that's the fundamental difference. And so I think you have to decide who you are in the world. The type of human who trains their algorithm to work in service of them, or the type of world that accepts that the algorithm trains them. It tells you what you want to see and you just accept and move on. And I want to be the person who trains my own algorithms. But I don't think everybody does.
No, definitely not.
But do you think they should, I guess the question, based on your question.
Yeah, but your argument there is that they don't want to, they just want to follow. They're happy following, aren't they? They're happy following.
And there's no judgment to that.
Yeah, no, not at all.
It sounds like there is. There's absolutely no judgment to that. It's just that they care about learning about how the world works the same way that I care about directions.
Yeah, but the issue, if you take the fast food analogy, right, which is you could go, well, they like the fast food. And you go, but is obesity a good thing, right? And so you go, well, they like the intelligence, they like the echo chamber, they like watching lots of content. Okay, just it's not necessarily good for them, right? And so what happens is we lean into many things which are bad for us, and there's an element of, yes, you're curious, and you're more happy to be a follower than you are leading or curious or whatever it might be. But I can't help but think that an abundance of anything can lead to significant consequences, and we've seen the impact of social media on mental health. And I just can't help but think that the impact of intelligence, if it's not trained and coached correctly, and if we don't use it as a utility, I think there's a lot of people which are going to lean into this. Unlike other technologies, most technologies are all of being tools, and I think that the issue here is that people will say, I'm a better father now. I get all my answers from ChatGPT, and my answer is, well, does that mean that your son, doesn't see you fail? Does that mean that he doesn't see you make mistakes? Does that mean he doesn't see how you got to that outcome and that result? And does that mean that actually he just thinks you get from here to here, and there's no hard work, there's no effort, there are no challenges, problems, or issues? Because as a child, to be brought up with someone who just magically makes great decisions and it's just wonderful all the time, I don't learn much from that. So,
well, in fact, there's I couldn't agree with you more. There's another problem with that, is that your child now grows up thinking that this is easy. I think one of the biggest problems we have in the world today, the reason why so many young people are going through mental health issues. Now, there was more suicides in 2000 than there was in 2025. It's not like we just hear about them more, but there's more young people with mental health issues. And I think a big part of the reason is we as parents vaccinated them against how hard life is for so long, either by, I've thought about it from a different way, but from what you said, either by showing how easy it is, because I've ChatGPT'd all the answers and it looks like I know everything, and when you get older you'll just have all the answers and it's easy, but also by the fact that we've protected them from everything. So we've not made them work hard, and the problem with this is that then they get into the real world and the world doesn't give a shit about them, and they have to make the way. So they think that they're a failure because all their programming says that it should be easy, and then they get into the world and it's hard, and they think, well, it must be me, I must be broken. But actually what we should be training them is that no, it's supposed to be hard. It's like really is supposed to be difficult, and this being a better father by giving answers to everything from ChatGPT, that's counter to everything of value.
Yes.
What your children need to see is that you've lost a business and that you did okay, or you've lost a marriage and you come out of it okay and you're better off. Like, they need to see the rough edges. Yeah. We're doing no value sanitizing and vaccinating them from that.
Yeah. Coming into that world of abundance, when I talk about abundance, I don't talk about the eventual futuristic abundance. I'm talking about abundance of answers and intelligence and services, and everything is becoming much, much easier, isn't it? And so going through these different generations, that same hunger or motivation or resilience maybe isn't what it was. I think that there seems to be, a great example is sales, and I think this is a really interesting dichotomy. So I have lots of friends and speak to lots of founders of recruitment businesses, which are traditionally sales companies hiring salespeople. they find it super tough to find people who have got that resilience and tenacity.
Wow.
Right, to sell.
Which is funny because, again, in the talk last night, I put forward that sales is one of the most future-proof careers you can have.
Yes.
Like, if you want to be good at something, I would rather be a good salesperson than a lawyer in the world we're going forward into. Like,
yes. Yeah, being able to spin up a vision, be able to convince people of taking action or whatever it might be. Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's going to be an unbelievably important skill.
I do believe people need to be T-shaped going forward. If I was asking people to be curious about any one thing, be curious about communication. Be curious about your ability to sound more eloquent, to explain what it is you do better than the other people next to you. That, if there was a skill, in a skill where everything is averaged out. Like, I believe in the world, you better be, if you're in any career in any space, you either have to be above the average, and I think significantly above the average, or interesting, or interesting. If you are boring and average, you're done, right? So you better be completely above average and boring, or very, very interesting and average, or ideally you win if you're above average and interesting. And I think that the core to interesting, the founding block of interesting, is you can only be interesting, and yes, if you're interested in people and things, but if you have the ability to communicate. And I can't see a better skill in the world. I travel around and I speak quite a bit. I can't see a better place in the world. I'm on a stage for 45 minutes. I have the assumption of authority when I get on stage is mine to lose. But if somebody's flown me halfway around the world to speak, the assumption is, well, this guy, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I have extended attention, so 45 minutes of human attention of 1,000 people in a room. Where do you get that? My average video goes out is 4 minutes long, and the average watch time is like 45 seconds. But in a room full of people, they'll listen. But then the best thing you have is the belief that you are there. The authenticity of it. We're a hop, skip, a jumping away from you wanting to host me on a podcast and me saying, I can't actually make it, but can I give you my digital twin? And you can just have a conversation. It's programmed with me. And people won't genuinely know if Joe Rogan did actually speak to Musk that time or not. Whereas when you and I are standing on a stage, or if there was an audience in the back of the room, they know we're there. So your ability to show up well in front of the other humans and is great, and that's not derailed us from your point, but and your ability to sell, I think, is the people who can speak will sell, and it's still a fundamental human need.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, your ability to influence. Do you think this expansion of the digital world, and I call it intelligent connection, how do you think it's going to change human connection and how we value it?
So it's quite funny. You call it intelligent connection. In Relentless Relevance, I put forward that we get so obsessed talking about general intelligence, AGI. So first of all, I think we need to do it. In fact, when I hang up artificial, it's a shockingly bad idea. Like, we got to stop talking about this as artificial. It's terrible because artificial relative to what? But let's just stay with the AGI thing. I think that the future is not about whether it's a general intelligence or not. That's uninteresting. What's interesting is that it's a connected intelligence and we're not. So human beings, we have this like really, really low bit rate of communication that was the best thing that's ever existed in the world forever. Like, I can use my larynx to blow air at your ears, and your ears can pick it up and be like, yeah, that sounds legit. And then we can take it through these microphones, do it to them, and then fire it into that guy's brain, and he's listening with his ears and be like the magic trick. When people talk about like, oh, I wish I had a superpower. My man, my woman, whatever. We are already superheroes. We're supernatural. Nobody else can do what we can do. But we're at like, I can't remember what the exact number, 37 bits per second, right? People talk about general intelligence, but what the real worry is connected intelligence, which is that my like coaster will be able to know when my glass is empty and tell my fridge. They don't have to know the same things, but everything can be connected. Whether this knows how to play chess or not is irrelevant. Just the chessboard has to know, and they all have to be indexed. Yep. The concern for the future of humanity is that they are a connected intelligence and we are a disconnected one. So our communication is actually really, really, really low definition, low fidelity, whatever, low resolution communication relative to how they can communicate with each other. In a millisecond, gigabits of data can can be transmitted. We're at bits of data per second. And so the future for me is catching up to that. Now, I mentioned earlier these, like Nolan Darboh, the first guy to have a Neuralink brain-computer interface.
Yep.
So now that thing very, very quickly figured out that instead of just sending Bluetooth signals, it kind of figured out, well, I know where you want to get to, so I'll just conflate the 12 signals I need to send and do it instantly. And then instead of you moving the gun to the left to shoot the guy in the head, the guy's head just explodes in the video game. That's amazing. But now imagine that you or I, now you've got Nolan Darboh and the dude who just programmed the plane to fly. Now, right now, we've got a little bit of a gap. But imagine I could convert my thought of what a sailboat looks like into an image. It could get my brain-computer interface could understand sailboat. It could beam to your brain-computer interface sailboat, and the bit where we've currently not figured out is then your brain turns it into electrical pulses that in your brain says, sailboat. So now I'm just thinking, and you're going, it's a sailboat. That's a reference to the Clerks movie. But now what's going to happen is we're going to have disconnected and connected intelligences. And the few people, the quadriplegics with the brain-computer interfaces, they're going to eventually figure out how to network each other and how to communicate at the speed of thought. And at that point, we don't let them have it. So at that point, we all have these chips in our brains because it simply makes sense. And it's nonsensical that we wouldn't all have these things. There's almost no version of the world in which we will not communicate via these network things. What I think is in a world where I can beam you any idea, gigabits of data in 1 second. I just read this book. Boom. I think that we will value more than anything, sitting down over a burger with an actual human, and we won't do it loosely. I will give brain-computer interface to meetings with my banker, to my thing, to stuff. But when I'm sitting down with Ezra, having a chat, we turn off there and we become human again. And I think we'll increase the value of human connection, not decrease it.
Yeah, interesting. I can't help but think that won't happen.
You don't think we'll have BCIs?
No, I think we will do, and I think we will communicate in different ways like that. But I can't help but think that
we won't bother with the speaky bit.
No, I don't think I'll switch it off when I speak to my mate. I think that'll be even more fun. That'll be the point at which I can let BCI fucking loose. You know, and he can,
that's amazing.
Do you know what I mean? Like, so this is the safe environment where I can share thoughts that I wouldn't share with anyone else.
Crazy wank last night.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
So that's my kind of. That's my, my safe place to really leverage that technology.
And I think hopefully we'll do it at a bit of both.
Yeah.
Right, and hopefully we'll have control over it.
Yes.
Right, that would be the big stress of thought crimes. To get Orwellian.
Yeah, I agree with you. You're on the intelligent connection piece, and actually, what's really interesting is the fact that you will become connected before the Neuralink does, which is your digital twin. And so your digital twin will be created, talking to other digital twins at lightning speed. And what will happen is you'll get a summarized, it won't be speed of thought, but intelligent connection will come to us much more rapidly, and it is doing already. But its ability, the autonomous thinking capability of our digital twins will just exponentially grow over the next 36 months. And that will then be able to, it'll basically be like my digital twin will be like a filter. And it'll filter up to me, the rich parts of things I'm interested in. The exponential processing power will be done by the digital twin. But coming to your connected thing, I think I sat down with Tom Carson the other day, who's a professor who specialises in neural interfaces. And it's really interesting to talk about that. He works in non-invasive approaches. Obviously, Elon's in the invasive space, and so it is really interesting to think we are currently our brain has the ability to process data which is not limited to our current sensory ability. So our current processing capability is not limited by the brain; it's limited by what we can touch, sense, and smell, whatever it might be. And so, I was speaking about this only literally with David Wood last week, which was the fact that if we all had a bloodhound nose, you and I would know that a cat just took a piss 200 metres around the corner, right? And that would define our reality. And so what we were talking about in that conversation was the fact that our current realities are defined by the senses, by our senses, not by our brain. Our brain just receives the data, from those and processes it and creates the reality we live in. And so what was really interesting about this is not only does intelligent connection kind of have the ability to process all that information and to connect it, it also has the ability to add all types of sensors into it.
Yeah.
Example being that it would be able to see this room, right, and it would see infrared that we wouldn't see. So its reality will be far more rich.
Yeah, I think
than ours.
I actually talk about that in the book. I think that's going to be one of the biggest step changes that we have, is that right now I think we see 0.0003, I mean, I've got maybe a zero wrong, percentage of the available light spectrum. Now imagine that's because the singular tool that we have for seeing light is our eyes. And so if we can put something in, if you're able to create a digital eye that can help people who couldn't see, then why would you stop the development at the idea of letting them just see the available light range? It makes no sense. Yeah. What you would turn around is you would open it up to more things. And so the idea that we live in a world in which we're seeing bands and lights and realities of where you can see your microwave work, or, like it's insane to me. Like, I think that all of a sudden we have a whole bunch of different inputs in the world. Our world becomes different.
Yeah. Our reality is redefined. I mean, it is going to be a shallow Hal moment, isn't it? It's going to, we've turned all the lights on. Oh my God.
Yes.
What do you look like?
Yeah, exactly. 100% it's going to be crazy. And hopefully it happens at a pace at which we can deal with it. But
but that's really interesting. Imagine that way when they start to build, this room actually looks completely different. You and I look different.
But we care about different things fundamentally then.
Yes.
Right? And maybe it's a better thing. And listen, there's no value in pessimism, okay? Because no pessimist has ever achieved anything worthwhile. Pessimism is just you can be cautiously optimistic, but you must be optimistic. There's no value. And the optimism comes from the fact that every single generation of human that's gone through disruptive change, they're always better. As I said, there's less suicide in the world today than there was. We don't think it is because it's reporting, but than there was 25 years ago. Like, the world is inherently better. Our access to medical, access to things. And so we can only work on the data. And the data says that we will be better. The only challenge to this, the only negative thing perhaps, is that the one thing that will change in all of human life and the species, we've always been the smartest entity on the planet, and we're about to enter the era when we're not. If we get to a point where there's this master intelligence, there's ASI, super intelligence, and again, I hate the term A. The idea that it's a super intelligence we still call artificial is so ridiculous, right? But like machine versus organic intelligence or something, but just not artificial. It's a terrible thing because it makes you think that we are the yardstick. I don't think the future, by the way, Tim Urban, he talked about the intelligence staircase, and it's like the ant is here and the chicken is here and the monkey's there and we're there, and then an ASI is there. I think it's a terrible way to look at it. You've got to think about it like a beehive if you want to go organic. It's everything. It's all connected. I just hope that if there is a super intelligence, something so much smarter than us, I hope it treats us like we treat our cats, not like we treat our cows, right? That's the only point of worry for me, is that it looks at us as cute little things that like impetuous cats that it likes and wants to look after, rather than something that it can just like an inconvenience that it can do with as it pleases.
It's a real fear, isn't it? Because the closer I get to the epicenter of AI and the people I talk to, the people closest are the ones that are most worried about it. Every one of them. I sat down with a guy called Mehdi. Mehdi is, he runs an international council for data centers. He's literally going into these places and seeing the size of the investment, advising governments on, where to spend billions, where to put a nuclear plant to fuel it. And he's sitting there, and we're having a great chat about data centers, and it just unfolds into, I'm just going to be radically honest. I mean, my whole future is dependent on this. My business is in it, but I am absolutely petrified by the impact this is going to have. I have the same conversation with everybody that's in that epicenter of it. They're really in the heart of it.
The epicenter is the worst. The epicenter always gets it wrong. There's almost, you look through every disruptive technology that exists in the world, and look at the predictions of the smartest people in the field just prior to the disruption, and their predictions are always the worst. Always.
Yeah.
The science fiction writers have a higher hit rate than the experts, because the experts are experts of the world. They can only see it. They have too much data. So any group of smart people struggling with an interesting problem, it's not because they're not smart enough. It's because they're too smart.
Yeah, they're not 1 degree away.
Right. My friend Howard Mann says it's hard to read the label from inside the bottle. Medi is in the bottle.
Yep.
And so he can only see it. And again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be nervous. I'm just saying that the one group of people that I pay the least amount of attention to are the experts in the space, just because categorically, of all of human history, the ones who get it the most wrong, who are the worst predictors of future growth, are the experts.
Yeah.
Almost bar none.
I guess the difference here, right, is that and I'd agree with that in most circumstances, right? I think that what we're talking about here is that epicenter, okay, is not a small place. Right, so if you were to talk about this, someone who's worried about, DNA DNA reprogramming, right? And we go, DNA reprogramming. If you speak to the experts of that, well, they're in that so tightly. What I'm talking about here is that we're not talking about the guys that are building the AI researchers or in the models. We're talking about people. When I say epicenter, I really mean that they're closest to seeing the scale and the impact and the capability. They're not necessarily the scientists that are in the heart of it. You're actually building the scientists which are doing the scientific research and analysis around this. They're the experts which are, I guess, close to the center of this and able to see the scale and impact it's going to have.
Yeah, but every time I hear them speak,
Yep.
all like that dude on Diary of a CEO,
Yep.
all they're talking about is the destruction of the state of the present.
I think that what the people that I'm talking about are people which are flying the flag of both sides of it, and they're saying actually they're optimistic about the outcome on the basis that we get the guardrails right, and the fact that we put.
But even the guardrails, what an absurd! This is like the cows walking up to the abattoir and saying. The cow doesn't get to dictate the guardrails of the abattoir. The idea that we can put guardrails into place for an intelligence that's so beyond our stupid little pithy human things, like the reason a CAPTCHA knows that we're not a robot is because the robots are much faster than us. We're so staggeringly stupid that it takes us a long time. The idea that we can go and put together a think tank of people to build up guardrails, first of all, it just takes one bad actor in the world that doesn't care about your guardrails, and again, this is where that China-America debate would happen. Yep. One bad actor to change the rules, and all of a sudden the guardrails break.
Your hypothesis there, okay, is the ultimate fear, right? Which is what they're highlighting, which is that we don't control it.
Right, but let's assume
that's the ultimate fear.
Well,
right?
Why is it a fear? Like when people talk about survival of the species and Elon Musk, like this Mars race for me is the biggest wank that I've ever seen. Like we got in 1969, when my parents, day after my parents' wedding, or 2 days after my parents' wedding on their honeymoon night, Neil Armstrong landed on the moon. And it was the biggest thing in the world and everybody cared about it. What an amazing thing. It was nothing. Nobody. Why we never? If it was important, we would be still there. We would be going back. It was just a big dick swinging contest between people. It was Kennedy and Khrushchev or whoever was in at the time, and it was this big ego race. And the Mars thing, and then everyone says to me, "Yes, but the extension of the species." Well, where life is really, really hard. Most people, life isn't that great.
Yeah.
Like, let me ask you this. What if we as a species have evolved a step too far? What if actually we would have been better off before we could communicate? What if the version of Homo whatever sapiens before they were Homo sapiens was actually a happier species generally than we are now? What if when we lived in the African savannah, people talk about privilege all the time, but privilege is a weird thing because you got to date it.
Yep.
Because for sure, I understand the idea of the white privilege today in a Western society, but the reason that privilege exists is because for a long time, they were way worse off because they lived in this little wet rock where you would die if you were outside for a week. Yep. Whereas if you're in the African savannah, you were like, hey, look, lunch. Oh, look, dinner. Oh, sun. Oh, I don't even need to build. It doesn't rain. And so what if we'd stop there? So even if they do take over, maybe they'll do a better job.
Maybe, but that's the we're handing the.
But they'll have better data, right? Like, would you argue a surgeon? If you have a choice,
irrespective, come back to that point though, right? So you talk about they'll have the data. It would be up to them to interpret that, right? They'd interpret that, and so if let's say they make good decisions, those good decisions are based on their hypothesis of what good looks like.
And maybe killing off humanity is the right decision.
Maybe.
But maybe that's the right decision.
Possibly, but it's not the right decision for us, and we're currently in control.
For sure. But control shifts. Every empire, like even if you just look at us as a microcosm, control goes over. The Romans ended.
Yes.
Their impact was great, but then it was somebody else's turn.
How many of those people created the nation that killed them? Maybe there's a few examples of that. Yeah, but I guess there's 2 points to that.
I see. That's very interesting. You're right.
2 points to that. There's no empire that ever said, you know what, I've had enough being the leader of this empire. You can have it. Right, that's the first thing. So it wasn't a voluntary action. The second point is that we are slowly building, and people are flying the flag that we're building an empire that could potentially surpass us, and we do have the ability to influence that change right now.
You know what's really cool about what you just said? We have to agree on a hypothesis first. Now, hypothesis is that a lesser intelligence is capable of creating a greater intelligence. And I guess the reason it happens is because actually it's the network compound effect of many, many iterative lesser intelligences. Can a billion humans create a single entity, AI, that is smarter than an individual human? And I think the answer we're finding is yes. This then challenges the entire God hypothesis in a very interesting way, because if it states that a lesser is able to create a hyper, more interesting intelligence, we've always presupposed that even if I give you that there is a creator, our presupposition is that therefore that creator must be vastly more intelligent than us. But actually, that could just be one step further down the loop, in that a bunch of non-smart people created this singularity event that led to the formation of the universe, which destroyed them completely and created the space for us to grow and happen. And maybe we're just the next folding of that. But as soon as you allow that a lesser intelligence can create a dramatically better intelligence, your entire hypothesis about creationism changes completely.
Yeah. The landing on the moon. Isn't the value of that? I wonder what level of confidence and belief that gave the US.
Oh, I absolutely think it was hugely valuable.
Yeah.
I do think that it was incredible that we landed on the moon. I think there's an inherent massive value in just doing hard things.
Yes.
Right, so we did a hard thing. It's like climbing a mountain. There's no utility value in getting up Everest, but you did a hard thing. That's going to make you better at everything. Nobody who climbs Everest goes on to be a really average banker. Like, people who do hard things in their hobbies tend to index to do hard things at work. It's not like we can just turn it off. Yeah. And so I think the same is true for the United States. Getting through that race, winning that race, the confidence it gave us, I think is absolutely astronomical. Yeah. What I just think is that we were sold a story that it was potentially way more significant than just doing a hard thing, that this is a very strategic outpost, like Greenland, or, and we have to get there. And I think that we've been sold the same thing. People are very, very seduced about landing in Mars, but is there as much utility value in landing in Mars as we think there is? Now, building a second option for us to exist, the nihilistic, and again, I'm not nihilistic at all, but the nihilistic point of view would be, should we survive beyond our planet? I don't know, but I just think that we really want to get excited about really big things, but I can't help myself but think that a lot of these things are just really, really smart, rich people in a race, because it's uninteresting for them. Like, they're first amongst equals in billions. That just chops and changes. Therefore, if they want to be the best in the world, they have to win at the Olympic sport that the billionaires are currently playing. Yep. And the Olympic sport that the billionaires are playing today is get to Mars. It's
a new challenge. And so I guess, if we hadn't stood up against cholera or the Black Plague, that would have beaten us.
But that was to quote your last guest, that was a hair on fire problem. Right, that felt like a hair on fire problem. I wonder if And maybe it does. Maybe I wonder.
But my point was we have to remain pro-human. Right?
Yes.
And I think the question about whether we should outstay our welcome, I think we've just got to fundamentally continue to be pro-human, a bit like we're pro-elephants.
Yeah, listen, I offer that as a thought experiment as opposed to actually, like, I absolutely do want us to be pro-human and want us to survive and think. I'm not like, oh my God, humans are terrible.
There's some fuckers out there which aren't.
Yeah, totally.
The founder of Google is pretty famous.
But that was like Mao's problem as well, right? Like that's why, like, Khrushchev was all helping Mao do lots of cool things. Then he realized, wait a minute, this dude actually doesn't care if we live. Like, that's deeply problematic. Maybe we shouldn't be helping him build bombs that can kill us all. There is a control of power that's at play.
Yeah. Well, I just think that we've managed to build things that are physically stronger or faster than us and have other capabilities. So intelligence doesn't seem to me to be a reason.
Do you believe there are available? Because I don't think humans can ever be happy. I think it's a myth. Like, to say, I want my kids to be happy. No, I want my kids to be able to access happiness at a reasonable amount throughout their life. I want them to always be not too far from where happiness exists. Yeah. Do you believe that we, as we sit here now, are if we had to score our life, do you believe that we would exist in a state of more entries of happiness and less entries of stress than humans 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago?
I would take the fight or flight thing there, and I think that actually I would say that we're under less stress, right? Because I think that and it's a really difficult one, isn't it? Right? Because the point is that
you're not scared of getting eaten by a lion.
Yeah. Your standard of living has increased. You're living longer. So I would suggest, are we healthier, living longer, physically stronger than we used to be?
Do you think our satisfaction, our perception of satisfaction, which if you think about it, your satisfaction is what dictates, it's the other side of your happiness, right? So I would argue that we are less satisfied now than at any other point in human history. In that because we have access to everything that everybody has in the world, our dissatisfaction is higher. Therefore, and this is why I think like maybe we overstepped.
You could say that. I'm not pro social media in many ways, right? I think that they have a responsibility to sort out those echo chambers. I think they're,
I've got an idea.
Done right. And so, but if you think about it, it's kind of interesting, isn't it, that people can satisfy their curiosity, their interests in a much broader way, right? So if you look at it, if I take that group of sales guys that I was talking about, people say that people aren't as resilient today, right? And that's why I can't find these people which have got the same tenacity or resilience. I say that what you're asking them to do is less important to them, right? And what you need is, in order, resilience, tenacity is all based on purpose. And sadly, when a 23-year-old walks into a room today, compared to 10 years or 20 years ago, and you could tell them what we're doing is so important and where we're going and the goals we want to smash through as a sales team, we can do all these things, that would be incredibly high sense of purpose. The issue you've got right now is that they have access to so much intelligence that their purpose is completely distributed across so many different things. They care about so many things because they're emotionally tuned into, and you look at their echo chamber of the things, and they've got wild animals they're worried about the survival of, they're thinking about politics, they're thinking about what's happening in Gaza.
Building a better bank is very low down their priority list.
And so you come into, but they're dependent on, now I want a guy to come in and sell recruitment services. But the flip of that is that they are, so coming to that, are they happier or are they more satisfied? They're able to satisfy more interests, right, and understand more. But I think it's our realities have changed since the, if you roll back thousands of years, right? So what those guys were doing, were they satisfied? No, they were continually fighting every day to put food on the table, right? And we've seen the wildlife. It's like and here's Jamira, the cheetah, now been traveling for 7 days and has got 3 little cubs and hasn't managed to kill anything, and we're wondering whether she's going to survive the next you know, than the next night. And then the next night she finds a wild boar, eats, the kids survive, and she gets beyond it, right? And so I can't help but think that there will be moments in our humanity which won't be dissimilar to that.
So I guess the question I would ask you is, they had big, meaningful problems to solve. Their stresses were about, will I be able to feed my family? Will I be alive in the morning? What will happen if this drought continues? Our stresses are, how many likes did I get on the video I posted yesterday? Yeah. And again, you know, listen, it's all, I don't want to belittle anything. Like, I know life was hard then. And I'm not saying, like, I do believe that generally speaking, we are better off. It's not like I'm this nihilist that doesn't think it. And I'm glad progress happens. In fact, it couldn't not happen. I do worry about this. Like, I think curiosity should be an effort. I think curiosity is rewarding when it's hard. And I think the idea of information coming easy and everything coming easy, to what you described to those new salespeople and things like that, I don't think that's serving them well. I think the curiosity is wanting to work hard, wanting to do work, or the fulfillment of curiosity is doing the work to learn something you wanted to learn, yep, as opposed to just asking something quickly to teach you. So I was blown away by Learn by Google. Have you played with it at all?
No, I haven't. No.
Your son might be a bit young. My daughter is about to do her A-levels. And so we were playing with it. And what I love about it is it doesn't give her the answers. It doesn't want to give you the answers. It wants to make finding the answers more interesting for you. Yeah. So what it does is she puts in her interests and her things. It understands what she likes. And then when she has a chemistry question, when it's looking for a metaphor, because to me, all storytelling should only exist for two purposes: to increase the distance between humans or to decrease the distance. So to increase the distance because you're too close to a problem, I want you to see it from here, or you're too far away from the problem, let me explain it to you in something you know. So what Google does is it will turn around and say, okay, so I want you to imagine, and it might go something that she's interested in, and then build a metaphor around that, but it still makes her answer the questions. It still makes her do the work. It's a brilliant tool, and it's like iteration one of it.
Amazing.
But I love that it doesn't, it all it's trying to do is, by linking it to something she cares about, it should increase the surface area of her curiosity about the topic. And I think that I love the fact that very, very smart people sitting in rooms somewhere that we're supposed to hate because they're billionaires, inside those billionaire chambers, people are doing interesting, cool shit.
Yes.
That's making us better. Yeah. Which is, what a time to be alive.
And I think, yeah, absolutely, I totally agree with that. And that's a brilliant example, actually, of how we can expect AI to solve the problems it creates in many ways. And so we might have this abundance of intelligence. We go, well, how's it going to affect education? But actually, the way that you can then assess someone's knowledge interactively, right, and you can coach them and train them and teach them, will change. And it's just it sounds like a really immersive, a very intelligent way of taking your daughter on a journey to learn the things, ensuring that she's learned.
Yes, because it understands that your ability to learn is the victory condition, not having the information. Yes. And so by understanding that, it knows that my job is to teach her to learn better. It's almost indifferent to what she learns, because if they cared about that, it would just, this goes back to exactly your point you made about just getting all the answers to fatherhood from ChatGPT. Yeah. No, but that's they've missed the point completely. Yes. I think.
I'll tell you a funny story. The godfather of AI is actually a relation of one of my business partners.
What?
It was at a conference with all the big hitters. He's leaving, and he says, "I've got to leave to catch a flight." Someone catches that he's leaving, says, "No, don't do that. We've got a jet flying back to, I think it was Nice, where you go." And he's, "I'm going back to London." Go, "We'll drop into London, drop you off, and then we'll go to Nice."
It's amazing.
And he goes, "Just come with us."
Baller.
So they go, "Oh, Father, that's great. Thanks, much appreciated." So he gets rid of the commercial flight, jumps in with these guys, gets on the flight. There's 6 or 7 billionaires, I think, on the flight. He says that the only thing that those 6 billionaires spoke about on the whole flight back was cryogenics, deliberating the right age to freeze themselves.
Yes, because because you're rolling the dice, right? So do you want to wake up young? But to me, cryogenics feels like I think that we'll have a much better idea of just getting younger bodies than we will have of, because what you really want to do is to be as wise as you are at 80 in the body of a 30-year-old. Yeah. So that's a catch-22, because if you freeze yourself at 30, you still have delusional self-belief, which is great, it's a superpower. Yeah. And then you come out later, but I don't know, it's such a cool debate.
I think if they can restore you back, bring you back to life, then they'll definitely be able to de-age, regenerate organs and flesh.
And absolutely, at the right time, you're going to have the muscles and the flexibility of a youngster, even if you are older.
So interesting. But what I say is, what's hilarious in that debate is that let's imagine that the religious guys have got it right, and there is a heaven. Yeah. And I can imagine just arriving at the pearly gates, the doors open, I walk through, and there's just, angels and this incredibly beautiful environment. Everyone's loving and giving. There's not an ounce of pain or sorrow. People being fed grapes. It's just organic. It's incredible. And we walk through and go, oh, wow, it really is heaven. And then you go, who are the guys in the ice cubes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these dead guys just sitting there frozen waiting.
Looking out.
I would be too petrified. I don't know. Yeah. And also, so the reason why I think the answer to the question would have to be younger is, there's that theory that there's two forms of life, right? There's the life you live before you know you're dying, and the one that you live after you realize. And I think around somewhere about your, late 30s, early 40s, I think you're always aware of death, but you only start thinking, only when death starts becoming an option, like, oh shit, I'm of dying age, or something, do you start really thinking about that. I think that, for what it's worth, I think there's a third era, which is the moment you lose your utility. So, and I think this is one of the biggest problems. We've not hired the only phase. It's amazing to me. We train every phase of life. We train you in primary school for high school, in high school for university, in university for work, in work for your next job, for your next job, for your next job. And then you retire and we give you nothing. Like, you just, thanks, man. Off you go. And nobody trains you for a lack of utility. And I think a lot of people live in that third phase of dying. One of the stresses for me is, first of all, and I don't know if this is universal or just me, but I think I'm smarter in fact, I'm almost certain that I'm smarter and more successful than I was in my 20s, but my confidence is inversely proportionate. Because I realize who I am relative to the world, and because my remaining potential feels less, whereas when I was 20, I could be the richest, most successful person in the world, and the potential felt like it was there. And so I feel like the older I got, the less I would want to live forever. Like, living forever feels like a young person's thing, but living forever, I don't know. I don't know if that feels like, if life continues to be this difficult. Like, the default for me, British weather is a better view of life than South African weather. South African weather is sunny with chance of clouds. British weather is cloudy with a chance of sun. And I think life is more cloudy with a chance of sun. I think life is inherently difficult.
Yes, it is tough. It is a challenge.
So why extend it? Yeah.
Why extend it? The only reason you extend it, I think, is through optimism that life will become richer, more nourishing, and we'll hit a world of abundance, or the fact that you'll be better equipped to address the challenges that life throws at you.
The counter challenge to that is that you will also be less relevant. And in fact, so we could argue that you would be less useful in the world. Sure, you could enjoy it and you could do things, but so much of the body of knowledge you gained at the richest part of your life no longer feels like it's a cure for a disease that the world has.
But you'd only extend on the basis that you felt your physical health would improve over time.
No, but what I mean is, even if your physical health improved, does your curiosity, would that exist at the same level? Would you not have reached a degree of curiosity fatigue? See, I reckon I've seen friends of mine, and we can get started with the actual anytime we're going. So a friend of mine posted 30 things I learned by 30. Yep. And then he posted 40 things he learned by 40. And I was turning 50. I was thinking, I should be posting 50 things I've learned by 50. And then I thought, no, that's ridiculous. If I'm still growing at 50, I'm doing it wrong. By 50, you should have gone from 40 to 30. And by 60, you should go from 30 to 20. And you want to die with three things. Like I think you want to die, by all means be curious, but at the beginning is about, again, intelligence, wisdom. And like ideal death would be dying when I figure out the one thing, like dying understanding the underlying philosophical thesis of your life. And if you just keep collecting, so my question is, I mean, I don't know if I want to still be learning, but learning in supportive direction. I don't know if I'm just not sure that how I would feel if 200 years from now I was still alive, and even if my body was fit, would I not be just exhausted about learning shit by then?
Every day's a new chapter, though, isn't it? You can't tell me, because you're not interested today in all the same things that you're interested in 10 years ago, are you?
No, of course not.
You evolve. And so as the world around us unfolds, it just unlocks enormous possibilities for us to.
And I will say I'm more curious at 50 than I was, I think, at 30.
Yeah. I think it's the difference between skills and knowledge, isn't it? Because I'm probably consuming more knowledge because I'm developing the skills and I'm realizing that what my limitations are. So I realize that certain behaviors limit my ability to learn or to grow. And so it's those skills that are continually improving, right? And I guess those skills now broaden out into not just skills around listening or ego or the things that get in the way of maybe that you evolve in your 20s, 30s, 40s and 50s. I think it's actually the fact that on top of that, there are just this exponential and abundance of kind of resources and new tools to learn and grow.
Okay, you've changed my mind. I think the pivot that you mentioned there, I think that's key, is ego. When you learn when you're younger, because I think ego is vilified. You don't want that there. I think ego is vilified. Like when you're young, it's a superpower. Like we need to have a strong ego. That delusional self-belief. Nobody tells you about it. That when you're 20, you have this glass full of delusional self-belief, and you basically are smart against the odds. And nobody explains to you that, by the way, it runs out when you're like 35. Like because you then understand your knowledge relative to the world, so you realize you're not as smart as you thought you were. But I love the idea. You're right. The pursuit of knowledge in absence of the fulfillment of ego changes the game. And so you'll be curious for this almost, I don't want to say knowledge for the sake of knowledge, but learning for the sake of learning as opposed to for a competitive edge or so like I can't wait for when I get to the age where I'm convinced that every old person, especially old men, at one day is walking along and somewhere in our body, we don't know where it is, there's this organ that is your give a shit. And at some point you just lose it and you're like, oh,
it's the best.
Amazing. Like, yeah. Oh, that guy doesn't like me. I don't give a shit.
I have a meme that I saw some time back, and it sums up, if there's one real principle that I can embed in my 6-year-old boy as early as possible, is this meme. And it says, I can't remember it exactly, but it says in principle that, in our teens, we worry about absolutely everything. In 20s, we start to understand who we are, and we start to understand that other people are also worried about stuff, how they're perceived. In their 30s, they start to question whether those people are thinking the right things. By the time you get to 60, you realise that no one gives a fuck.
No one cares. No one is thinking about you.
And so I think if there's anything I can bring to my son and anyone else around the world, it's to realise that don't spend your life, don't wait until 60 before you realise that no one gives a fuck. Because imagine living a life under that illusion. It's unbelievable. It's such a waste of opportunity. And I've been there. Luckily, I would suggest in a lot less areas maybe than maybe others. People really suffer with this, But I don't think there's a greater thing, because you're effectively casting a shadow over your whole life, which doesn't exist. The only people that really give a fuck are some friends and family. And as that gets wider, that care dissipates.
Yes, totally. You're absolutely right. And it is nice to have some people that care about you, but also you start only caring about their opinions. Like I care more about what my parents think than I do about the average person. But also, for me, even though I try to create a reputation that shows I don't care, it isn't that I don't care. I just care very selectively. So I've realized, I have this thing I talk about the principle between best and favorite. I think people pursue best a lot. So they want to be the best at something. They want to build the best thing. Whereas I think that best is tricky. One, because as soon as, you can then become second best, and second best is not nearly as interesting as best. The second best restaurant in the world, people wouldn't go to. The people who'd go to the best always want to go to the best. So once you're the second best, they're like, I could give a shit. Whereas favorite, the laws are different. If you're somebody's favorite, if you came to Isle of Man to visit, I would take you to my favorite restaurant. I'm not pretending it's the best. In fact, it happens to have won the best restaurant in the island last year. Yeah. But I'm not saying it's the best restaurant in the island. I'm just saying it's my favorite. Jazz and I go there, once or twice a month. We really, really like it. We'd love to take you out there. And we'll always make that decision. And what I love about it is it happens to be completely plant-based, although 3/4 of the people who eat there aren't. And she doesn't give a shit. Laura does not care whether she's indifferent. The people who love her restaurant will fill it. And if you arrive and don't like her menu, because even if you eat plant-based, as we happen to, we like, like fake meats and things like that. She doesn't do any of that. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You're spoiled for choice. Yes. So she's happy to polarize ruthlessly everyone who isn't, and she just becomes the favorite. And so I think that that's what I've tried to be in my life, is that I recognize there are some people who I care about, and I want to be favorite for them. But in order to be that, I have to be willing to, in fact, it's actually easier to find out who I don't give a fuck about at all, and polarize them ruthlessly. Yeah.
Also, the critical part of that is define your own criteria of success. Don't let others define it for you.
100%.
That's your issue. Because the point is, if you're using external criteria to assess your success, you're effectively saying, I'm going to let everyone else judge whether I've hit what it means success to me, and that's fucking bullshit. You set your own success criteria, own it, and at that point in time, you can say you're the best in the world because you've set the criteria of what the best in the world is on your agenda.
Yes.
Who else says that? I say that. Loads of people. I've had loads of people historically say to me, "Oh, you've done really well here," or you've done so well here, or done different things. And I go, well, depends how you're measuring success here, because you've got 2 kids and you've got an unbelievable family and you've got these other things which so many people don't have. You can look at business or money. People measure success, but I think that's absolute bollocks.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's bullshit. Like, why would you create that as a set of criteria, or use that as a criteria to measure anyone, really? Unless they say to you, do my whole life is just about earning money. That's all. That's the only thing that's really important to me. Well, if that's a decision you've made, and that's cool, that's fantastic, and well done. You've done a great job of that. But to judge people without understanding what's absolutely critical to them or yourself seems wrong to me. And I think that's where the pressure comes externally that you're talking about. Do you know what I mean? You've got to remove that external pressure. It doesn't exist, because the person that's saying to you, well done, actually doesn't give a fuck either.
Yes, totally. So I've got 3 things I want to hang up. I'm going to hang up Warren Rustand. Okay, I'm going to hang up board games, and then I'm going to hang. Well, actually, no. I'm going to play this one straight away. The one thing you mentioned there was about money, and I do think this is a big problem. For what it's worth, I think that, and maybe there's something we can revisit in a second, I think that capitalism will be a bridge. We used to have ego, and the status was war. You and I, in 1815, would have been leading battles at Waterloo. Like, that would have been where we got glory from. There would have been some people wanting to be rich, but for the most part, being if you were the first son, you might have been one thing. If you were the second, you made your name in conquest and things like this. Capitalism allowed us to bridge from that to whatever the next thing is. I don't think money will be the be all and end all that it is now. I think it's just going to be a means to an end. But that aside, what I realized years ago is I was driving back from one of my friend's offices, a guy by the name of Craig Rodney, and I was driving from his office to my office. And shit was going really well for us. Our little office had been, Fast Company said it was world's coolest office for small business. I had a stretch limousine with flames down the side. It took me to meetings. It was really cool, little flags. And life was good. And I was driving along though, and as I was driving past all these other little office parks. South Africa is full of them. There are these little office buildings, like 30 companies in them, and then you drive and there's another one. And I looked around, and all of them, at the time I had I think it was like a Panamera or something, and I saw like, that guy's got this, and somebody's got like a Ferrari, and somebody's got something else. And I realized something there, and then it hit me like it really, really hit me like a hammer. First of all, I thought I was on the douchebag curve. I realized that. And secondly, I realized that in the Olympic Games of being wealthy, no matter how well I do, in the Olympic Games of being wealthy, I would never make the team.
Yeah.
In the Olympic Games of being wealthy, even if I surpassed all of my dreams, I would maybe get a chance to beat the club team in my suburb, right? I wouldn't transcend to the national team. I wouldn't transfer, there's no chance. Yeah. And so most people have built their entire life around a sport that they're staggeringly average in. And again, you might turn around and say, well, sure, you're average, but that still puts you above a whole bunch of the population, except that I've never met a person that cares about how their cleaning staff thinks about them, right? They only care about how their peers. So we've got the wrong criteria, because in the sport of wealth, the least interesting thing you can have is wealth. So the constant pursuit of wealth is this hedonistic treadmill that gets you absolutely nowhere. Like that cannot be the criteria. Because if you're only getting wealthier, there's a small handful of Olympic athletes that are so far removed from us. And in fact, their life, there is a point at which I don't think their life is better. I read that Elon Musk, Walter Isaacson book.
Yes.
And all it made me think, I categorically will fight you and anybody. I am more successful than Elon Musk. There's no doubt in my mind. In the pie chart of his life, he's over-indexed completely on one, and he has nothing else. Now, you could argue that success is only important when measured on intent, and his intent is to get us to Mars, and that's fine if he does it. But if I look at all the criteria of my life, I outperform him on most of them.
Yeah. But that's important, because that's a criteria that's through the lens that you're looking at, right? And so for you to think that anyone or very few people are beating you at the criteria that you're setting.
But generally, we want to have some degree of a fulfilled life, right?
Yeah.
I'll take down Warren Rustand. So Warren Rustand is an amazing thinker, Fortune 5 CEO, MBA player, worked with 2 presidents in America. And I was lucky enough, I'm in an organization called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And they have once a year a Global Leadership Academy in DC that he runs. It's like 20 of you from around the world are chosen. And at the end of this thing, he takes you through on this 4-day journey. And he closes this speech. And I love Warren. I think he's absolutely brilliant. But he closes with a line, and he says, Ezra, your success is only important when measured against your potential. And you're sitting there in this circle, and every 2 people, there's a box of tissues. And when you walk in the room, you should have been warned. You're like, what are those tissues for? Sure enough, 5 minutes there, I'm like, oh my God, my whole life's a mess. I'm a failure. And I'm bawling, and I can't stop crying. And other men are hugging me, and women are hugging me, and I just... like this, and even 5 minutes later, when it goes around to the other person, you just hear me every now and then and it was what I realized is that I'm not living up to my potential. But here's the problem: that line is an act of aggression, because if you measure yourself on your potential, you'll always be a failure. There's no chance, no matter where Elon Musk gets to in his life, he's going to die thinking about all the things he could have still done that he's run out of time to do, and he's going to die a failure in his mind. He's almost set himself up that he can't get out alive.
Yeah. It's changing, isn't it? I remember you've probably seen the meme about Steve Jobs where he says on his deathbed, I've achieved all these things, built these incredible companies, but as I sit here, I only think about all of the missed opportunities and time that I could have spent with my family. Yeah. And people go, you can take a lot away from that. And I go, no. All that means to me is that, he spent 99% of his life doing what the fuck he wanted, and he was regretting it for literally 0.1% of it.
Yeah.
So that's the point. It's like he's kind of and so I don't suggest if you had told him that's what he's going to say on his deathbed, he wouldn't have changed, wouldn't have altered his course.
No, you're right.
Any view, but I agree with your point, which is around potential. You have to get to a place where you are clear about what you want to achieve, and there's a level of satisfaction.
And I think you have to define it earlier. So this is the biggest problem: is we're horizon chasers, so we constantly want to chase more. If you define, I wish I'd sat back. One of my talks is on intention seeking, and as opposed to attention seeking, and it's the idea that we should set up. Earlier, you said you need to know what success looks like. I think I agree with your principle 100%, but I think I want opportunities to be successful frequently for my entire life. But I think what we need to figure out is what your enough is, right? Because you can only be post-economic once you've decided what post-economic is. So if you want to live the life of a billionaire, then your enough is when you're a billionaire. But if you're happy to live the life of a 10 millionaire, as long as you define your enough spot, and you basically recognize that, I think what you want to be is you want to get to the highest point in whichever grouping you're in and quit there. So if you look at your life right now and you think the kind of people I'm hanging with and things like that, I really like them. This is the lifestyle I want. I like Warren Buffett. I don't need a bigger home. I don't need a better car. Once you get to wherever you feel comfortable there, if you're in the top 25% of that group, the biggest mistake you can make is moving to Mar-a-Lago or Palm Beach, because then you're just like shit again. You're a rookie and you got to work your way up. So I think that if I could get my kids to understand something, is figure out your enough early. And write it down and revisit often, so that when you get there, make it a stretch. Don't make it easy. But when you get there, have the discipline to stay there.
I just don't know that's right. I think awesome. I think there's a lot of truth in what you say. Okay, and there's a sense of knowing that you're in the right zone. But fundamentally, one of the things you talk about in your book is about one of the three key pillars is curiosity. And I think that curiosity comes from the fact that you haven't attained certain goals. That your energy and inertia, right? We're continually seeking resources, and it's that seeking resources, whether that's intellectual or physical or whatever it might be, that drives our creativity, our invention, and that's what drives the brain. It's about being stimulated. And if you feel like, I think that there's so many people that decline when they give up.
I'm not saying give up. I'm saying transcend from have to want to. Okay, so if I get to a point, because I agree with everything you've said, and I think there would be nothing worse than getting to, again, that I want to die. I think the goal of life is to shorten that third phase, which is I'm no longer useful, I'm waiting to die, right? That's got to be the worst thing ever, when you're just like, well, shit.
Yep.
I want to die useful. I want the last thing I do on this earth to be something of utility value to the earth, even if it's in my own small way, sharing wisdom with a grandchild or something like this, right? What my problem is I'm sitting here at 51, and when I go to work tomorrow, I'm not going to work because I want to. I wish I could tell you that. I wish I had the ego to say, I'm just doing this because I want to. The truth is, I'm going because I have to, because I still have responsibilities, and because I built a lifestyle that I can't yet be completely relaxed about. So if I stop earning money and I stop doing things, so what I want to get to the point is where I get to that. And we were fine. We were kind of that in South Africa, and then we moved because I wanted to make sure I was that at an international level, as opposed to. But if we get there, and then the decisions, I want to do the speaking gigs instead of having to get on a plane every time somebody says, "Oh, we want you." I'm in Sydney in 2 weeks, and then in Barcelona next week, and things. And it's nice, but it's also I love my family. I like my home. I would love to get to the point where when I take the gig, I'm like, I want to do that gig. And I can only do that when I've reached my enough, which I think where we're at now, I don't need a bigger home or a better car or anything like that. I think this is it. But now I've got to get to the point where that is completely secure and then move to the next phase. So all I want is to live a life where I do what I want to do, as opposed to where I do what I have to do. And I think by setting your barrier right, otherwise you're just chasing economics.
Yeah.
But I want you to challenge me, because I love that.
Yeah, but there's several ways to do that, though, isn't there? Right? There's the first. So you're either looking at reducing your costs. So really, what you're talking about there is get to a place where you've got
need less or make more.
Yes, and also your biggest issue is the fact that you could make certain compromises in your life today and reach that stage you've spoken about very quickly, but you're choosing to put certain things ahead of that.
Yes. So right now I'm choosing that I think that the lifestyle we have is good enough.
Yep.
I think that it's okay, and I'm very happy with that. So now I want to get to the point where I'm completely debt free in that, where relative passive income can support that life, that if I died tomorrow, I wouldn't have to worry about my wife and my children and things like this, and everything's good. But let's say I get seduced, we're chatting, and then you tell me about a brand new car, or you explain to me that actually my life would be better if I moved to London from the Isle of Man, and yes, it's going to cost me a lot more, but I'd be around more people. And I'm like, Ezra, you're spot on. And so I do that, and then I go back another 10 years. Now, I'm working, longer. And so all I'm saying is by pegging your enough, I don't believe. Look at the guy who sold MySpace. I'm sure he has an amazing life. People often look at him like he's a failure. I mean, he was like, I don't know how much he got at 20 something. Yep. And now he's a photographer and he's traveling around the world shooting photos. I don't think he sits there thinking he's tapped out. I think he thinks he's tapped into what fills him the most.
But it's selectively enough, isn't it? So I guess you've got to work out what is enough for you. And so that's a difficult one, isn't it? Because there's a fine balance here. We know that in order to have the drive to do those things successfully and deal with the problems that you might have in the future, you've got to still, be intellectually stimulated. You've got to have enough. You have to have enough. You need to be challenged, right? Solving problems, hard problems, putting ourselves under in positions of discomfort is recognised as where we grow. Right. And so it's just making sure that, and so I agree with you. I love the fact that I don't yearn for material stuff like I did. I've done the watches and the cars and all the bits and pieces, and it's great to literally go, do you know, I just like buying a few bits and clothes here and there, and everything else is about experience and
I bought a new hat,
happiness. Yeah, absolutely. And for my son, and for my family, and so that's a great place to be. But I think. And I'm a bad example of this, right? Because I come in every day and want to move everything that I'm doing forward. So I'm I'm in the completely wrong lane to be giving kind of direct advice for this. But I do look at it as I see complacency. I see when you talk about enough, you're talking about a lot of the examples you've given there are kind of material-based enoughs, really.
I definitely don't feel you should ever get intellectual enough or learning enough or being useful enough. Yeah. Right? I don't think you should ever reach those. I think if you can figure out, but I think it frees you. If you can get to the point where you are financially, you've reached like enough. Yes. Like again, Warren Buffett never having to buy a better home. There's a friend of mine, his name is Robbie Brosen. He started a brand, actually you guys don't know well, it's called Nando's. Yep. And he's a really interesting guy. And he had a line that he said to me once. We were having a breakfast and he said, true power, you've done really, really well when you can afford to buy a Ferrari, but choose not to. And for him, it's a bigger flex because we were driving in his car to breakfast, and he has one of these little, those little BMWs with the I ones or whatever.
Yeah, i3,
yeah, whenever they came out. And so he was driving that. And in my mind, I was thinking, sure, founder Nando's, probably some kind of flash thing. But I was chatting to him about it, and it's not even like a sexy BMW. It's kind of a cutesy, awkwardly looking one.
Yep.
And he loves it. And his thing was like, it was so great when I got to the point where I didn't have to give a shit about buying a Ferrari. In his mind, that's a much bigger flex.
Yeah. The other issue we've got, right, is vulnerability. So as your wealth increases, you become a bit greater target. You can feel more vulnerable. And so security becomes a factor. And actually, roaming around Cape Town in a flash car, you definitely have the ability to put
a sign on you,
putting a sign on your head, right?
Well, literally, kidnapping is now a thing that's happened.
Yes.
But
so I guess
I don't think that that's what he's done, but you are right.
Yeah.
I think it's just genuinely that he is post-economic enough to realize that, you know what you never asked me when we had a pre-call. You never once asked me how much money I'd made. Yeah. Like it didn't cross your mind. It was, are we going to get to some? I mean, we've not even started
where we plan to.
Yeah, but. Can we have an interesting conversation? And at no point was your criteria, how much money has this person made?
Yeah, or been successful at whatever.
Yeah. Well, I guess you'd want to deal with, I would imagine you want your guest to have some degree of, it goes to that smartest person in the room we were talking about earlier, that you want them to have something of interest they're bringing to the table. Absolutely. But the idea that we built our entire life around the least interesting thing about most people, I can say this because I can't stand them. My wife's parents, yep. They're horrible, horrible people. And right. the phrase about them, that cliched phrase is, that person is so poor, all they have is money. It's all they have, and it's all they can lord over people, and it's all they,
Yeah, it's shocking. And the issue with that is that it just destroys authenticity. It's soulless, isn't it? Actually, because you end up, and I can only imagine, I've been in similar relationships where you get to a place where you're like, hold on a second here, there's 3 people in the room, not just me and you. There's me, you, and money.
Yes,
100%. And it feels like you've got absolutely no interest in me, so I may as well leave the room. And so it just destroys authenticity. They've got this kind of third person in the room, which is all they really care about, and that's
their only yardstick for them. That is their sport.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that.
It's been really hard for my wife, but maybe that's helped. We always get shaped by things. Helps shaped a lot of my point of view around who I want to become. And listen, I'm not advocating for a single second that people shouldn't be ambitious. And one of the outputs of ambition in the world we live in today is always going to be financial. But I am saying that if you went in knowing at which point you're happy to, anything else you make beyond that is gravy, but you keep your lifestyle at that, I think it would be a degree of a win.
Good place.
And then chase success beyond that. Keep being successful at things, but because you want to, not because you have to.
It's just so tough though, right? Because look, let's just talk about that a bit more, right? I've got my son right now, 6 years old. Right. And if you wind back 20 years, actually now we're going into a place of real uncertainty. But, unfortunately, the quality of his life will be defined by his ability to make money.
Do you think that for his generation?
Maybe not.
Curious.
Maybe
I'm curious
not.
Maybe
not for his generation. That's what I'm saying. If you wind back 20 years, or 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years, it would have been, the standard of your life will be defined by the money you earn. Right?
Yes.
And so I'm not talking here about, hundreds of thousands or millions or billions. I'm talking about the fact that, I want to be able to put a roof over my head and be able to pay my bills. Get away from this feeling of month to month, which, so many people are under that pressure. And so, and that raw skill, that raw ingredient, because we've got to prepare, we think that there's going to be a life of abundance. They might not work. Actually, he might have to work. He might have to be smarter and harder to meet the basic standards of living. He might need to be better equipped than anyone has ever been before. Look at Mad Max, right? And so preparing people, and I do get the enough bit, right? But it's very difficult to kind of go, you've got to be super hungry and resourceful, and you've got to be able to fend for yourself, and you need to be entrepreneurial, you need to be commercially focused, you need to be sensible, you need to understand that you've got to earn for self, become independent, to a point where we then want you to then put the brakes on that and say enough's enough. You know what I mean? Like it's a complex. I'm talking about children here, by the way.
By the way, and I don't even know if I think that it's something I want to tell my kids.
Yeah.
But because at 20, when people talk about work-life balance, I think one of the biggest problems in the world today is that 20-year-olds want work-life balance.
Yeah.
Fuck off, you've not earned it yet. Work until your eyes bleed. Yeah. If you have balance today, you will have no balance later. Yep. You've traded long-term balance for short-term balance. Yes. When you're 20 and you have delusional self-belief and energy, you should be working till your eyes bleed, right?
Yes.
And then when you're 30, or when you've built up that base, you can relax slightly later. So I don't want to rob people of their ambition early, but I do think that they should have a victory condition, a destination that they're working towards. When they get there, they can also decide, okay, actually I want more, totally fine. Or they could get there and remember that the past version of themselves pegged this as I want to be 1 degree wealthier than my parents, for example. And if that is their criteria, and let's say they got there, but then they get there and they realize either, okay, but now I don't have to keep on just trying to make money. I can do more interesting things, or not.
What we're really talking about there, right, is actually we're separating drive and self-sustainability, being resourceful, all those things, hunger, ambition, motivation, with values, actually. Right. Because actually what we're really saying is that you need to have all this DNA, this survival DNA in the world, which I think we probably agree on, right? But what we're really saying is that, but your value system is don't value assets, don't value. Money is not the
beyond your preset value. I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to live my entire life where the root cause of my drive continues to be because it will make me money. So I want to get to a point where everything that I'm doing is because it will add value to my life. If it was up to me, I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I would like to do a Jiu-Jitsu class every day. I'd like to play board games every day. I'd like to have time to read every day. I'd like to run my companies a couple of hours a week, maybe, because I've got professional leadership, which I do. And I would like to pick and choose the speaking gigs that offer high utility to, my daughter's 18. She's about to go to uni. My son lives by himself. He's 22. He works. And I want to get to the point where I choose the gigs that Jazz and I choose to go to and to do. And so I just want, I still want to get paid. I still want nice things. She will always want to have a nicer kitchen. Like, it's her dream. She always think about these ideas. She loves it. But I want to be able to do that as an aside.
From where you're sat today, you've got a great grasp on where technology is going and how we need to think and plan and prepare and evolve. What are you hopeful from where you sat?
Let me start with why I'm hopeful, and then I'll go to what I'm hopeful for. Is that
great?
Correct?
Do it.
So why I'm hopeful is that there's this principle called infrastructure inversion, where every single time that the ceiling is currently the top that we can see, and then what happens is once we build it, then that's something else we can stand on. And all of human history is inverting infrastructure. That it goes from being the ceiling to being the floor. And every single time we do that, people create something to solve one problem. And then by accident, we realize, wait a minute, we can do this. Oh, wow, we could probably also do, and then a whole bunch of things. Facebook was built to solve the problem of staying in touch with your school friends. But of course, that's not what Facebook is now. It does so many more things. And that's because the infrastructure exists, which now opens the world to possibility. So I'm hopeful because all we are as humans is problem-solving machines. And I'm hopeful that no matter what happens, we're about to just unleash so many more interesting, cool shit to solve. And our job as humans is to be part of the solution. And I just, hope that we still get to be on the team. And that's the question. But I think we will. Like, I imagine that we might have intelligence. The one thing that might happen is it just becomes indifferent to us. Like, it might care about us. Even when I say cat or a cow, I've really elevated our status a lot because we're not food or comfort for an AI. We're like it cares about us as much as we care about the ant you may have walked over on your way to work, or even the parasite that's inside your body. So I am hopeful that we'll have the coolest, most interesting problems. And I'm excited because I don't believe there has ever been a group of, we're the luckiest humans that have ever existed. There has never been, and I don't think ever will be, humans that have gone from completely disconnected from technology to within a generation where we're headed to, and we're watching it happen. And from here, it's just chaos. It's just the rate of change will be fast. So I think we're the luckiest humans that have ever walked on the planet. What I'm hopeful, what I hope for is, it sounds cheesy, but it really is all I hope for. I hope that as I age and get out to dying, I hope that I continue to be useful to the people that matter the most in my life, and that I stay curious about interesting problems up until the last second I die. I hope if I can die curious, I think those who die curious win. Those who die who think they've got the answers, they lose.
We should leave that there, Rich. What a great summary. Thank you for taking the time out, mate. Like, I love your energy, and because you're curious and you've got this energy, you kind of you're prepared to put it out there and be. It's almost like you've got so many things that you have proven, and to do that, you're prepared to put new ideas and concepts out.
And I'm very happy to be wrong.
Yeah, and to be proven right or wrong, and to learn from them, right? And so it's great. It's just the world is a better place with people which are prepared to share and push the envelope.
Thanks for having me. It's been really cool.